Hey guys, welcome back. This is going to be lesson 27. I want to build up your scales and use those to derive our key signatures. One of the fascinating catch-22s about life is that we have to look at everything we encounter as a data point, and that those data points are related and make sense in some kind of conceptual framework. Unfortunately, so many things we encounter will seem random and therefore don't find a place in our memory. We can't relate them to one another or see their relevance, so we dismiss them. Without an overarching philosophy or a concept to draw them all together and make sense of them, they don't have any meaning on their own. But if we learn an abstract concept or theory, that makes no sense and won't stick in our heads without the necessary data points to ground it in reality. If you knew nothing about notes and nothing about music, and somebody started to talk to you about major scales and whole steps and half steps, this stuff would make no sense to you at all. You could memorize the words, but the likelihood of you retaining that memory and making any use of it is very slim. What I'm trying to do here then is put things in the proper order. We've looked at the key of C, not because we are learning a key signature at first, but because we learned some notes that went together in some songs. We found out how to relate them to the fretboard, noticing that we could play E, F, G, and B, C, and D in songs like Jingle Bells, and then we noticed that E's and F's and B's and C's were only a fret apart. You wouldn't notice this if you were actually learning guitar on your own, or if this weren't pointed out to you. You would just think that's how guitar looks, but we want to know that there's actually significance to this. F's and G's are a whole step apart, C's and D's are a whole step apart, but B's and C's aren't. There's a pattern there. We're not just learning a brute fact about the guitar, that we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C in this certain order, but this is actually a scale. This is the template for all your other scales. As we move along, we can see that there's whole steps between C's and D's and E's, half steps between E and F, etc. And we can now memorize that. That's a major scale. You could have read that in a theory book with no knowledge of how it works on a guitar, and it wouldn't mean anything to you, but now it does. The scale is whole step, half step, whole step, half step. I want to memorize that as whole, half, whole, half, emphasizing that third one, or I say 2 wholes and a half and 3 wholes and a half. More likely though, I think the best way to think of a scale is to look at it as 2 different wings of material. We have a whole, half pattern on either side, and they're separated by a whole step. So you've got whole, half from C to D to E to F, and we have whole, half from G to A to B to C. They're separated by the whole step between the F and the G. This is not just the key of C, this is all keys. This is all major scales. This is your do, re, mi pattern. When you notice that you have these 2 wings that are identical, whole, half and whole, half at the beginning, at the end, you'll notice that you're actually starting a G scale then. G, A, B, and C have the same relationship as C, D, E, and F had. So we can take that G, A, B, C and start a G scale with it. I've written out here all the notes starting on the letter G. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I've erroneously placed them over those 2 wings, whole, half, whole, half. This won't quite apply. When you look more closely at it, you'll notice that we have half steps between E's and F's, but when I've started the scale on G, when I get to E and F, I need a whole step. What do I do with that? I have to raise the F to F sharp. That pushes it a whole step away from the E, and then a half step closer to G. So now we satisfy whole, half, whole, half by making one adjustment. We've sharped the F. When you look at a song in the key of G, it should have, after your treble clef, a little sharp sign sitting on that line where the F note goes. This shows you that we're in the key signature of G. Every F is going to be sharp in this song. It doesn't matter if it's the F on that line, or the F lower in the space of face, or any other F. All F's are now sharp because we're in the key signature of G. This is how the key signatures work. We're playing the major scale of G, and that means there are F-sharp notes. You ran into this earlier on your own when we were playing from the G string up to the high G note. We went G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. That was our inventory of natural notes, but it didn't sound quite right. A lot of people will adjust that F to F-sharp on their own. They'll just say it didn't sound right, so I guess I was playing F's wrong all the time. No, you actually weren't. You were playing F correctly, but it fits in the key of C. When you started your scale on G and ended on G, your ear was naturally tending to listen for a G major scale. As I've mentioned before, there's a psychological phenomenon here that makes us want to hear F sharps, but it's actually based in the physics of our world. We're designed to pick up the sounds of these waves. Our brains are tuned to major scales, which are actually created by the vibration of notes. As we continue then, we'll see in the key of G that we have our two wings, whole, whole, half from G, A, B to C, and then after a whole step gap, the whole, whole, half again from D to E to F sharp to G. D to E to F sharp to G, being a whole, whole, half pattern, obviously looks like the key of D as well. So I swing that down below, make that the first wing of a D scale, and put the A, B, C, and D in the second wing. Again, to satisfy the whole, whole, half pattern there, I have to raise that C to C sharp. B to C was a half step, but we don't want the half step there once we've started on D. We want the half step between the C and the D, so it becomes C sharp and D. Because we now have two sharps, F sharp and C sharp, we'll put those in our key signature. You see the F sharp sign on the top line for the F sharp, and a sharp on the third space for the C sharp. Again, throughout this song, Fs and Cs are going to be sharp now, regardless of where they show up in their octaves. This could be the C that is indicated there, or the one that's indicated on the ledger line under the staff. One thing we maybe didn't realize at first, because we just thought of the key of C having all the natural notes, is this also means that there are no sharps in the key of C. So C has C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. In the key of G, we've added an F sharp at the 7th position. This is because of our whole, whole, half pattern. We needed it higher than it was when it was just an F, further away from E by one step, and closer to G by a half step. This is the leading tone. When you sing Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do, you can't pause on the T. The T is the leading tone, and it forces you, by dissonance, to land on the root note, the Do. That's a tension resolution. The dissonance of the F sharp note, or the 7th note, gives you consonance when it relaxes onto the G. You noticed that when you invented that scale yourself. So why doesn't the C have a B sharp? Well, it doesn't because the B is already a half step away from C. That's our natural note. So C has a leading tone of B. It's a whole step above the A and a half step away from the C. It's the major 7 note in the scale. It's an interval of a major 7th from the original C. To get into the key of G, we have to give it its leading tone. It's a major 7th above the root G, and it's a half step away from the octave G. As we went into the key of D, we maintained that F sharp because we were building that scale on the D, E, F sharp, G in the second wing of the G scale, and at the end we have to raise its 7th note, the C, to a C sharp to give it a leading tone. Again, that satisfies the whole, whole, half pattern in the second wing. Notice when we were in C, we went to the 5th note, the G, and made a new scale. When we did so, we added one sharp, the F sharp. Then we went to the 5th note of that scale, made a new scale on the D, and added one more sharp, the C sharp. So each time we can go to the 5th note of the scale, go into the new scale from there, and add one more sharp. Our sharps are accumulating. We had an F sharp in G, an F sharp and C sharp in the key of D, and now when we get to the key of A, we maintain the F sharp and the C sharp, but we have to add a leading tone for the key of A. So the 7th note is sharped. Notice the leading tone is the note right before the root. This is another pattern you're going to know when you're building your keys. The new sharp is always the note one to the left of the root, or alphabetically one before the root. When we go to the 5th note of that scale, we see again we have a whole, whole, half pattern at the end starting on the 5th note E, so we can take that and make that the new scale. We maintain the same whole, whole, half pattern on the E. To create the whole, whole, half pattern on the second wing, we need to sharp the D. This gives E its leading tone. So every key is getting a new leading tone. Again, you want to memorize these in the right order. F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp. If you keep them in the right order, you can always add up your keys. We have another little trick here that's kind of interesting. If I'm in a key that has F sharp only, then the key note is the note right after F sharp. F sharp precedes G in the alphabet, so if we only have F sharps, we're in the key of G. If you know you have F sharps and C sharps, and you're remembering these in the right order, then F sharp and C sharp are in the key of D, because C sharp is alphabetically one before the key note of D. If you know you have F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp in your key signature, then you're in the key of A, because the final sharp given, the G sharp, is a half step away from A. It's the leading tone we've created to get into the key of A. When we go into E, we have F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and the leading tone for E, the D sharp. In a sense then, all you have to do is look at the last sharp and you know what key you're in. Whatever that letter is, the key is the next note. You also memorize them by number though. If there's 3 sharps, you're in the key of A. If there's 4 sharps, you're in the key of E. If there's 5 sharps, you're in the key of B. So here we are in B now, with F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, and A sharp. One other thing I find super cool here is the balancing project we're doing. Notice the key of C had no sharps. In the key of G, we put 1 sharp in the second half of the scale. In the key of D, that sharp has moved to the first half of the scale, and we balance it by putting a sharp in the second half at the C sharp. So we got balanced again. When we go into the key of A, that C sharp winds up in the first half of the scale. We have the F sharp in the second, but we add the leading tone, so we get another sharp over there. We now have 3 sharps. We have 2 in the second half, 1 in the first. When we go into the key of E, we balance them again. The F sharp and G sharp are in one side, the C sharp in the other, and now we have to balance it by adding the D sharp. We got to 4 sharps there, so our 2 sides are balanced. In the key of B, the C sharp and D sharp are in the first half, and the second half is going to need a 3rd sharp, the A sharp leading tone, so we're out of balance again. 2 sharps on one side, 3 on the other. When we get to our next key, we're going to be back to an even number. So on the 5th note of the key of B, we go to F sharp. We take that half of the scale with its 3 sharps, make the beginning of the next, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and B. In the second half, we add the leading tone. We have C sharp, D sharp, E sharp is now added, and that's the leading tone for the F sharp. We're now up to 6 sharps. Finally, we move to the key of C sharp. This is our final key on the sharps. We go to the 5th note of F sharp, make a new key, maintain all of the notes except we add a leading tone. At the end, we add the B sharp, which is the 7th note, the major 7 in the key of C sharp. So now we've got all our notes sharped in the key of C sharp. This is kind of interesting and should have been very obvious to me, but I was really excited when I actually finally discovered it. What I realized was if we're in the key of C with no sharps and we sharp it, then we're in the key of C sharp with 7 sharps. At first we think of the key of C having no sharps, but if we think of it having 7 naturals, then it makes sense that the key of C sharp has 7 sharps. If C went to sharp, then it pushed all of its notes to sharp with it. So C has no sharps and no flats, or 7 naturals. The key of C sharp has all the notes sharp, 7 sharps. If I went to the key of C flat then, every note would go flat with the C. The key of C flat will have 7 flats. People will often say that they can't learn things unless they understand why these things are as they are. This is not true. We actually can learn very much by rote and just by learning the brute fact. But we can't apply that knowledge well, nor can we solidify it in our minds if we don't have some understanding of the hows and whys. We now know how to build scales. We even know why there are differing numbers of sharps and why they are there in each of the key signatures. Now we can actually learn how to put them together. The mnemonic strategies that we learn often seem quite contrived, and if they're forced on us without our understanding or our own invention, then they often don't make any sense and aren't very useful. Mnemonics are not artificial. The brain creates them naturally as we learn, and you'll often find this when you learn a list of different items. Here's one of them that we can use. I'll show this picture to people and ask them what the story is telling them. What is this guy up on the hill, I'll ask. And hopefully, without too much trouble, they'll decide he's a priest. And what's going on down in this valley? Well, there's a war or a battle of some sort. So I'll point out that this is Father Charles, and what he wants to do is end that battle. He wants to bring peace to the valley. So Father Charles goes down and ends battle. I'll ask the student to tell me the story a little bit. I'll say, who goes down and ends battle? Father Charles. Why does Father Charles go down? To end the battle. Right. Where does Father Charles go to end the battle? He goes down. So you just keep asking the question until a story is put together. Then I'll ask them to tell me the story. Father Charles goes down to end battle. Yes, close, but Father Charles goes down and ends battle. Okay, good. And so now they know F, C, G, D, A, E, B. F, C, G, D, A, E, B. Those are the sharps we learned. So if I asked you what's the first sharp, you'd go F, Father. And what key is that? Alphabetically, F comes before G, so there's an F sharp in the key of G. How about 3 sharps? What key has 3 sharps? You have to do a little bit of abstract reasoning here. It's like doing math in your head. You have to go, Father Charles goes down and ends battle. The third one, Father Charles goes. Okay, 3 sharps, F, C, G. And G is the letter before the key of A. So A has 3 sharps. Father Charles goes. How about 4 sharps? Father Charles goes down. Father Charles goes down. Okay, D is right before E. So we've got 4 sharps. Father Charles goes down. F, C, G, D in the key of E. This is a great aid for you. It's not the only thing you'll do, and you'll come up with your own systems. Feel absolutely free to do so. But hopefully this one will get you on the road to knowing your scales easily and practicing them in your mind. You don't have to memorize all of this. Again, you're a beginner guitarist, so just the concepts are sufficient at first. Copy all of this into your book, though, and study it once in a while. When you come across another scale, come back and relate it to this idea, or when you're asked a question about a key signature, review the entire idea. Have a great day. Talk to you guys later. Bye.